back to this episode of Transitioning Humanitarians Live with Vicky. Hi, Vicky.
Hi Estelle, hello everyone. It's great to be back this Thursday afternoon.
Yes, so we're finalizing the topic of failure that we have been discussing in so many different ways in June. So we thought of covering any other last minute uh, thoughts around or strategies around failure. And that's really the conversation about this today. So, Vicky, anything that we haven't covered in terms of failure that we should absolutely touch upon?
Mhm. I think we've covered a lot in terms of failure, but I think, as you mentioned earlier on, one of the perspectives we could explore is that what happens if we choose not to go for the project that we
Yeah,
decided to go, or not to transition, in our case of transitioning humanitarians, or not to go because of fear of potential failing.
yeah.
um, so I think that might be one of the things we have forgotten, or we have not addressed. um, yeah.
Okay. So if we talk about like we were thinking, we usually tend to go into this what happens if I fail logic, and I think that's a fair logic to think about going until the end to think through, right? So what happens if we don't fail? I think is the other question that we can ask, like
Mhm.
Vicky was saying, and in that regard, the way that I was like coaching some of my clients and what I have experienced from my own experience as well is if I avoid failing, this is what happens oftentimes I have seen. So I keep reinforcing my fear more. And
Yeah,
that's not what I want to do, obviously. But then it becomes even more difficult to do something next time because I have so much like strengthened fear that I can't do this, right? And the other one that I have seen more, therefore, is I reinforce that I can't trust myself really. And
yeah,
that's the other thing that I reinforce more. And I think the biggest problem with not wanting to fail or avoiding failing is then I feel like I am not free, basically, meaning that I trap myself in, okay, now I can only do this thing because I better not fail here because the other thing that I'm wanting, I can't go. And therefore, now this has to work. And then I create a lot of pressure there. And then I don't enjoy being in my current situation either. Then I become like this person who's like in between, right? It's like I always think of like sitting in between two chairs, but of course you can think of many other ways of like not really being present in my current life and not being also present on going to what I want to, and then just being in this in between. And that interestingly also lead me to then think I failed anyway, even though I didn't go to the other thing, but I failed anyway because I didn't
yeah,
really go and I feel coward, or maybe I feel like I am not a person who can do this. So then I get a lot of in this turmoil, and
yeah,
that's not helpful either.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, what you are mentioning is an example that I think we see a lot in the aid sector, and it's really even outside of the, at least for myself, the clients I work with. It is real. The fear of failing is not allowing me to go for the thing I would like
Yeah.
to go, or to transition, and that's really the core of this discussion, I believe. That I The fear, the anxiety of failing is so big that I say, well, I'm not even going to go there. And I think it's important to pay attention to how we explain it to ourselves, or what is the mental messaging that we convince ourselves, because it's really coming always from a negative perspective, as you say. Well, what if I don't get the job, or what if I will not what if I get the job, what if I don't like it, just like I don't like where I am now. So all sorts of very negative or sorts of already creating negative results for myself, or excuses of why I shouldn't even try to go there. So I think this is what probably stops most of the people. And I think we've talked about fear a lot, the importance of understanding what the fear comes from, and preparing ourselves for, you know, all the eventualities or all the situations that might come. So in this
Yeah.
sense, I think it's important to also look at failure as a part of the journey, as real something that it's not what if, but I would rather say when. Because on the journey of transitioning, there will be something that is not going to go according to the plan. There will be something that it's not going to work out for the first time. We may need to try once, twice, three times. So I would rather encourage um, colleagues listening to us to say, okay, failure is a part of the journey. It's not the opposite of something, is a part of the journey.
Yeah, exactly. And I was thinking also the other thing is if we don't choose failure, or let me say it another way. Obviously, we don't want to choose failure, right? Because it's so difficult to process. We feel shitty in the process doing it, and we all we rather not to choose it. And it's like a very human experience. We rather not to choose it, but we also knowing, like Yuki was saying, that knowing that this is part of our experience, we may as well choose it, because if we don't, then the consequences that I have described now, avoiding failure, makes us feel failing anyway. And the part that's not nice about that is that now we're putting ourselves in the situation where we don't like what we already have. We can't enjoy what we already have. And therefore, I mean, it's matter of choice after all, right? So either we choose to go for what we want and then failing. If we don't want to do that, I think it would be good then to decide not to transition, but still fully being present where you are. At least you make yourself a service, or you make yourself a good life or comfortable life, without tearing yourself apart inside of, oh, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, and I could have gone and didn't go, and all of these stories that could be running in our background. We don't need it. So therefore, if we decide that this is where we're going, no, this is where we're staying, and we're going to make best out of it, then as we may as well remove all of that um, torturing, beating up,
Yeah,
narrative that are not necessary. So therefore, then the important part might be, okay, how do I want to be present where I am? How do I want to do the work that I want to and see the sense or the impact, the result I want to, or whatever is making me leave or was causing me to want to transition? How do I remove those reasons, or how do I be okay with those reasons, right? And also bearing in mind that staying where we are also may require failing as well, and then how to learn to fail in that setting. At least that's in known environment, so we may know what to do with it, instead of going totally to an uncertain situation and having to do with a lot of different failures. What would you
yeah,
say, Vicky?
yeah, yeah. What you're describing is very important, because as you say, even if we say, okay, this is too risky for me, I'm not going to transition, I don't want to fail, or I'm too afraid of failure, I have paranoid fear of failure. um, and we say, okay, for now at least I stay where I am. As you say, it's important to explore all the options, to make my stay in whatever situation I am acceptable for myself. Because as you say, it can be really, then you can, if you're not, if you say I'm not going to transition, but then I'm also miserable where I am, and I also feel like, okay, I sort of I'm disappointed with myself, because so I
Yeah.
feel, as you say, as a failure. It's important to anyway rebrand or rethink or look at it as a different perspective. What is it? What is this situation? What can I sort of how can I use this situation for myself? Is there something for me to learn, or is there something for me to explore? Because you may well say, look, fine, this is a situation that I really don't like. I don't like to be. I would like to transition, but I'm too afraid. But maybe where I'm going to requires me to learn something, requires me to acquire something. So why not use this time, or why not use this opportunity to do something where I equip myself to feel better about transitioning? So
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, looking at this from perspective of making this place where I am useful for myself.
Yes. And the other thing that comes to mind when it comes to like avoiding failing or failing and then going through and to the other side, I have I have used this experience so many times when I have failed so many times learning languages and where I am now compared to where I was like when I started, right? And if I had stopped at some point to say, okay, I don't want to be learning because I'm too miserable failing, like for instance, learning English or German, I'm too miserable learning, and I just gave up in those moments, how my life would be back then
Yeah.
versus how it is now, right? And I always use this example for myself to say, like, learning going through those failures have allowed me to be in such a freedom to be communicating with so many people, to have jobs that I want to be speaking to clients I want to. Um, like it allowed me so much more freedom after going through that. Yes, the process of going through was difficult, but on the other side was so much worth it that I don't even like
Hmm.
second guess whether I should fail or not. Right? It just feels like that's how we do things. We fail a lot, we get miserable times through this, and then we go on the other side. And what if everything else in our lives was like learning a language or whatever the other example you can think of for yourself that you have managed, you have mastered to go through it, like being a humanitarian, right? In the beginning, maybe it was exciting, but also so difficult to be working with so many different people from different cultures, and following certain rules, right? Writing in a particular way. And those were very difficult, but we have all gone through that, gone through to the other side of being the professionals, being the persons who go to difficult war zones to be working. So we all have this type of experience that we have gone through so many failures, knowingly or not knowingly, and we have gone to the other side where we feel like it wasn't even like a brainer. Of course, I needed to go through that to be
Yeah.
the person I am now.
Hmm.
And if we think of those type of experiences, how they helped us being here, and that also shows that how much we can also go the next phase and then also say, I have now gained the freedom I want, the peace I want, the whatever else that we're seeking I want. So therefore looking back, it's like no brainer. I
Yeah.
happily traded,
Hmm.
right, to come to
Yes.
the place where I'm now. And I really want people to experience that, whatever that life you're creating, where it's not something that blocks you, but rather allows you to go through and feeling proud, feeling free to be, to have done this.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. As you're speaking, like some of my experiences came to my
Mm,
mind, like some of the big failures that, as I was failing, it really felt bad. And I think there were moments when I felt like this is the end of the world and end of my
yeah.
career and end of everything. But looking in retrospect, there was such a great lesson, because it forced me to really. It's a really, I would say, if I may, a kick in the behind that really made me realize that all of the things that I need to learn, or all of the things that I'm learning, or like how much I've grown, etc. But these experiences make me think of two things. Other two things is that, are we two questions? are you or am I as an individual punishing myself for failure, or am I
Mm.
allowing myself to fail so that it allows me to
Yeah.
grow? And the second thing is really institutions and organizations, because of course we know that some organizations have a room for accepting, so to speak, failure in terms of learning new project. And I even remember in my previous organization that we were starting a new project where we literally received a green light saying, go for it, try. We know that some of it will fail, and that's okay. But
Mm.
I do understand that maybe in certain settings there is no acceptance of failure. There is like zero tolerance to failure, which obviously is a situation where no team can advance if no failure is allowed. If it's really you always have to perform 100%, there is no such situation. So I would at least like to go back into the private one in your life, to really be aware that you don't punish yourself for the failure. You say, that's okay, I learned from it, I take something from it, I there is something that I'm gaining from this, as opposed to punishing yourself. Because if we go with the mentality, well, if you fail, I'm going to punish you. Like if I tell this to myself, then of course it's a difficult mindset to work in.
Yeah, and maybe also the other thing I was thinking about is that I think we think of failure also letting other people down, right? Or
Mhm.
like letting ourselves down. Or maybe we're thinking of the people who are really in need of that assistance, but because we failed, we didn't really do a good job of delivering what we could. And those are, I think, very valid conversations, very valid reasons to be sad about, to be mad about. And I think we are like we're all human beings. We want to do the best in those situations. We want to do the most in those situations.
Yeah.
And in those moments, it's also like Vicky, you were saying that it's easy so to be punishing ourselves, right? Collectively or individually, maybe saying out loud, maybe not saying out loud, and feeling so guilty about it or feeling shame about it. And in those moments, I think also the time to practice forgiving, right? Forgiving for trying our best, forgiving that we thought things would go this way and didn't go this way. Yes, we can always learn, but maybe also the other thing that we punish ourselves a lot as humanitarians is we have done this failure so many times, or
Mhm.
like I used to think of it definitely in my times
Mhm.
as a humanitarian, that we made this mistake and again, and we shouldn't be making that mistake. And I think we all can agree to, yes, ideally we learn once and then we just move on to being great humans to the next phase. But I think it doesn't work that way. And I mean, I know it from my own experience. I have tried to learn so many times from failures, maybe not quite learn my lesson, so it happens again. And in those moments, I think it's so easy to just say, oh, I shouldn't have done this, I'm not worth it, or whatever, whatever. But I also know that going that road is not useful, right? So, in that, like on the verge of going to that road, I stop myself and, like, okay, I can do all of those things and punish myself, but what's the purpose of doing it? Why am I doing it? And if I'm not wanting to do that, then what am I going to do now to do the next thing that's to improve the next thing or to make the next thing better?
Yeah.
But I guess the lesson always is that I want to be at the end of failing still feeling like I have done my best. I
Yeah.
think that maybe that's like for me the important part that I want to feel, that I didn't do it like half-heartedly, or I didn't do it just like for the tick or for being paid or whatever, right? I think that's like the important part that I always want to feel. And the other important part I want to feel is that even if I did fail, then knowing that I wasn't afraid, or even if I was afraid, I did go anyway, and I
Mhm.
did. I wasn't shying away from feeling disappointed, because that thing that I really wanted was so important that it was worth going for it anyway.
Yeah.
And I think these are the things that I want to feel, whether I fail in the end anyway, because then that gives me a comfort to say, okay, I can handle it. I can do the next thing maybe better, and maybe the other like 10% shift to the direction I went to. That's
Mhm.
still better than me trying to stay where I am and not really enjoying what I have.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I fully agree. I think that's a very useful perspective to have. Let me give my all and try the best I have without expecting results. That's really from my personal experience. That's what I try to apply. I'll do my best. If it's really important, I'll do my best without expecting the result. So then,
Mm.
the result can be. Can be 60%, can be 20%, maybe it won't work at all. And frankly, I mean, it's rarely that things work if there is something that I'm doing for the first time. It rarely happens that I get it right for the first
Yeah.
time. I think it's probably a matter of luck rather than sort of skill and strategy. So that's why I think it's almost if you look at these things statistically, and I know people probably don't like statistics. We can't be always getting everything right for the first time. It just doesn't make any sense. So that's why I think a more reasonable or more practical attitude is just yeah, let's give our best. Let's try our best. Let's learn and try again if it doesn't work for the first time.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I feel like we have covered enough about failure, and of course, if you have any questions, you let us know, or anything specific that you're struggling with that you think cannot be really solved because you have a very unique situation, so you let us know as well, right? Otherwise, Vicky, any last minute words before we
I
wrap
would
up?
just say that if you are struggling with fear of failure, or if you feel that okay, my fear of failure is so huge that I don't really even know, I really need help. Do let us know. Asel and myself, we are here. We are happy to work with you towards. Um, Maybe not overcoming but dealing with it. We're not going to take away the potential failure. But I think it's important to make it a part of life.
Yeah, exactly. And I was lately thinking also how we could be modeling this for other people around us, right?
Hmm.
And how we're dealing with it, how we're processing it, and how people around us are also seeing how we're doing it.
Yeah.
Because we humans like to learn from other people's behaviors rather than the words. So that's why I like to think of whatever I'm doing or not doing, this is also being like seen by others, so therefore they probably are also learning or
Hmm.
saying this is actually what I don't want to be doing, right? So that's why
Yeah.
um whatever the things that we can do differently than we thought other people were doing when we were struggling with that topic, uh if we can do it differently and in a way that's better than the one that was done before, I'm all for it. So I really invite people to also think of the failure and the topic of it. I think we're at this point where we're not tabooing it anymore. That's amazing. And now we can get it to the next level of us modeling a behavior of not avoiding it if we don't want to, but rather going through, maybe discussing it with others as well, how we did it, what did go well, what didn't,
Yeah.
and how we can support each other in that sense as well, right? So that's why if we can be models for that, I think that's an amazing shift.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much for allowing us to talk about failures this month, and we'll come with the next topic for the next month. Until then, thank you, Vicky. Thank you all, and see you next Thursday.
Thank you, Asel. Thank you all, and see you next Thursday.